Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to O'Neill Family Farms. I am your host, Rob O'Neill. Yesterday was Wednesday. We talked to our agronomist. He went out and checked all the fields. And luckily, this past week, everything kind of came out that was washed. I don't know if you see back to the earlier video that I took last week of those bad spots where the corn washed down the hill and stuff was kind of a concern. But he went out there yesterday and checked it, and we got enough there, and it's coming back fairly decent. He was counting stands, 25,000 kind of at the worst, he said. But so no, we shouldn't have to replant anything, which is really great news. But one thing is we're starting to do is fire back up the sprayer. My brother John was running it yesterday. We got started late evening. We basically probably got a quarter done. But we got to spray all the corn, start spraying all the corn ground again for its second pass post-spray. The weeds aren't very big, but around the borders and stuff, we get a lot of little water hemp starting to come up, and that's kind of the biggest issue we have lately is water hemp. It's a really rapid growing weed, and it's easiest to kill when it's smaller, and so we're wanting to keep on top of that. So we're putting down a contact spray which will kill it, or hopefully kill it, and also coming back with some residuals to kind of help prolong it. So hopefully we can get that corn to canopy over the row. Then usually once that corn canopies over that row, most of the time you're in the clear because weeds won't really grow without the sunlight. So we're hoping to get the corn to that stage without many weed issues. If it stays warm and kind of keeps pushing that corn along, we should be fine. If we get a cool week, which we possibly could next week, we may have to come back and do some borders with some spray. It's just we'll have to see. But no, that's kind of how things are looking now. We'll proceed on with the video. If that ain't one of the best things to put in a pickup, I don't know what is. So we still got June bugs all over the place. Every morning, you could sweep this off every night, still come back. Just June bugs, June bugs, June bugs. And somehow they get inside the shop too. So also the other day, sorry, turn this down. The other day, my brother got his tanks off his tractor. Now we got two skinny ladies in the shed right now. What we're planning on, or at least what I'm planning on doing today, maybe with Tom and I, just depending on how things work, is we're going to start putting these pivot tires on today. But right now, I started lining up the pivot to make a pivot road to drive along. But I think yesterday in the evening it must have got stuck because on my phone it showed that it shut off. And so I was going to load these up on the trailer, get them all loaded up, head down there, just unhook the trailer there so it's there, and then see if we can get that pivot unstuck. That's what the plan is. So this is what we got here. We got a stuck pivot. obviously. But no, this is the reason why we're putting on these tall tires, not used tires, taking off these used tires. These are kind of standard size tires. Actually, what these are old truck tire recaps, which is basically kind of the base, what you can get on a pivot. But they work well. This is a relatively flat pivot, but the problem is we get these spots. This one's got a lot of spots like this in it, and these short tires just can't quite pull over these silt. It just starts to push it too much. It can't climb over it, and then you get high centered, and then it kind of tends to just, well, get stuck. And so right now I get to dig it out. Okay, I think she got dug out, but while I'm here, obviously you can see the stuck spot. That wasn't too bad. How these pivots work, this is how electric pivots work, I should say. There's also a hydraulic form of it. But you got the end tower. This is kind of what you call a middle tower. But that black box is kind of telling this pivot to move, telling that motor to turn off and on. If you can see that arm right there, that's what you call the alignment arm, or there's probably a more technical term, but that's what keeps it in a line. And there's switches up in that box. They call them micro switches or whatever, that tell them that to turn off and on. And that's how it follows. Your end tower is always going to be your fastest, and then that's kind of your lead one. So you have a percent timer at the control box over there, and say you turn it on 80%, well, that's going to run 80% of the time, the end tower. And then all these other ones will follow along. And that's kind of how your pivot goes in a circle, I guess. But parts on a pivot, here's your gearbox, obviously, and then this is what we call center drives, which this one kind of turns backwards, or it doesn't really stop, so I'm not sure if that's a great deal, but it's still working, so we won't worry about it until it really gives us a problem. This pivot has drop nozzles on it for the sprinklers. These are basically called LDNs, which I can't remember what it stands for, but there's no moving parts on this one. It just kind of shoots down and then sends out a constant spray pattern. You can either put sprinklers, impact sprinklers. They also have what they call rotators, and that's basically they rotate a spray pattern. They also have IWOBs, are somewhat popular in the area. Which they do is kind of act more like rain, maybe. They kind of wobble. It creates a more rain-like pattern, if that's what you're into. But basically what we look for is if they work. And actually less is more. Lately we kind of tend to have them on top, be honest, because sometimes those drops will break off and you can't really tell in the tall corn. I know guys with lower and more water restrictions, drops tend to have a little less reduction in drift, but I mean you also have that chance of them breaking off and whatnot. So it's just a balance again of everything. Like everybody's going to prefer different things, but right now if I were to put them on a pivot, I'd probably put rotators or IWOBs on top, just because keep it simple and basic, but yet get a decent spray pattern, and also just usually the least amount of maintenance. But I could be wrong, I'm usually in. But we got that unstuck, and now we kind of got to wait for this guy to move over here near my pickup over there at the end, so we'll go from there. Also, when we spray, some people might be appalled by this, but we just drive at an angle. Yeah, we run over a little corn, but following these mounds and 30-inch rows is also kind of tough. So we just kind of cut our losses, especially in the hills. Just set an angle. You're only running over a little bit, and I've never noticed a yield drag, so that's why we do it. And you get a little bit better spray. Some of these guys at this short will even come back, and the ear right next to it will flex, and so we never notice any yield loss. Yeah, you see a couple tire tracks to the field, but usually it doesn't matter. That's what we do anyway when we spray. Well, since we gotta wait for this pivot to move a ways, and I don't want to do anything else with my life right now, I'm gonna walk out back to this pivot. On these older valleys, some genius had an idea on the back side of the lug bolts is to put nuts on them, and so instead of just setting them on a stud bolt, you actually got to pull the bolts out, and yeah, it just makes it a little more hard. I'll show you when I get there, but yeah, so I'm going to take this out there, spray some lubrication on the back of it, and hopefully it'll make it a little easier when we go to do it, because sometimes those can get stuck. It's the oil that's a creep, like me. Well, at least I lied to you on this first one. Maybe this pivot's late enough that it doesn't have these, but some of the older ones used lug bolts instead of lug studs or whatever you call them, but they'd put nuts on the back side of these, and so we'd come along and spray them. But since I'm here, I guess I could spray these. This actually might have made my day a little bit, because so far they are all normal, like the later models. On a Valley gearbox versus Rinky or Zamatic, is this output shaft is actually longer. And so if you're ever replacing, if any of you are new to irrigation, there is a difference between gearboxes. Valleys are a little different than Zamatic and Rinkys, which are about the two only other ones, unless you buy an old used pivot. Just gonna read the ingredients for you here. I think it says it's a combination of Panther Pea and Astroglide, whatever that is. So this thing's got very specific instructions to follow. I'm not even sure if I should read them to you, but it says, in the rare event that your Mennonite brother-in-law or your Dutch father-in-law gets out their billfold, grab billfold, spray hinges liberally, so in the next decade when they open it back up, they'll be ready for use. I'll be darned. Just kidding, guys, just kidding. Should be a fun next family supper with them. It's just for all the times that my father-in-law makes fun of my pickup. He still doesn't think I have it painted from the factory yet. He's like, why would you order primer gray? Cuts really deep. I believe we sang that in church last week. Got that pivot mostly done. It's just we kind of had a miscalculation on how many towers there was. There's 8 towers that require tires instead of 7, so we still got more at the shed. We actually got a ton. You've seen previous videos. But so we'll grab a couple more, head back out, and then we got to pick up the used tires on the trailer and then put them somewhere. So we're gonna do that, and we also got another pivot we might start putting tires on this afternoon on, but we'll see how that goes. But right now it's 12:39. I'm gonna go get some lunch, be back here in a little bit. And quite honestly, I was getting a little tired of my brother hogging the camera. It was getting ridiculous.